What's happening, everyone? Kenny back again. And today what I'll be discussing in this On My Mind video is that loving feeling. And what I'm referring to is that initial addiction, for lack of better terms. It's just that initial feeling like when you first get into the knife community, when you first start collecting knives, of just it's hard to stop. You get your first one and you fall in love, and you just want that next one. You want to see what that next one is all about. You get into the hype, and that's why I actually started my hype versus reality, was because there is a hype that is underlying in this community, and a lot of that's just word of mouth and videos. And that's what I talk about in my hype versus reality is, a lot of the hype comes from YouTube videos, and it's part of the reason why I started doing videos. And it's just, you start, it's almost like a snowball effect. You get into it, and the more you hear, the more you see, the more you handle, the more you want to handle, and the more you want to see. So it's hard to slow yourself down, especially at the beginning. And what brought this video up for me, what brought the idea up for me, is at the farmer's market that I go to weekly. It's where I do most of my shopping, is at the farmer's market down the street from where I live. And there's a guy there at the fruit stand that I go to that it's become kind of a friend. He's become a friend of mine, and the guys at the fruit stand have all kind of become friends. I don't get to see them outside of the farmer's market at this point, but one of the guys started asking me about knives, because one day I mentioned I had a knife channel. I forgot what brought it all up, and he was like, I've been wanting to get a nicer knife. I've been looking at Benchmades and stuff. So I've kind of seen him slowly get, closer and closer to buying one, and then he finally bought one. He bought a Benchmade, the 945, the mini. I think I'm getting that right, but I actually have never handled one of the minis yet. I don't think I finally did. I handled his, but I like the 940 original better. I just like the size better for me, my hands personally. So he finally got that knife, and when he got it, it opened the floodgates. I see him doing what I did when I got my first, nicer knife, was immediately start looking at the next one. He wasn't even, he hadn't even broken in his 945, and he was already looking at buying a 940. So he got bit. He got bit by the, the, whatever you want to call it, the bug. But my first knife, the one that started there were multiples. There was my southern grind Bad Monkey, as you guys have seen in past videos. I didn't bring that one up. I could go grab it, but that knife was given to me by a boat I worked on, and that was kind of like, it didn't quite bite me yet, even though I was like blown away by the knife. I had never handled anything that nice before, but it seemed like out of my range. So it was just like this, I never even used it. It just sat in a box because I was too nervous to use it. I didn't want to mess it up. And it was a gift, and it has an etching on it and stuff. So I didn't want to damage the blade. I didn't want to damage the coating. I didn't want to damage the knife, because it seemed so it seemed like so expensive, something I wouldn't use. Nowadays, it's not even close to my most expensive knife, but it's like half, if that, of my most expensive knife. But it didn't quite catch me yet. Once I bought my first knife, which was a Para 3, it was an original black coating, black handle G10 Para 3, and that knife, I don't have it anymore. I have this one. This is the M4 Blade HQ. This was my second Para 3 I got, and this is the one I did my first acid etching. And what else did I do to this knife originally? I heat treated I didn't heat treat, I heat anodized the handle hardware and stuff like that. One of the first knives I modified, but the first pair of 3 that I got opened the floodgates. Once I bought that one, within a week or 2, I had bought this 940. This was my second upgraded knife because I also wanted to do an anodizing of the backspacer. So this was my first anodizing job. And when I got this 940, that opened even more floodgates. You know, I ended up buying the mini grip with 20 CV, and it just, you know, every knife I bought seemed to open a new door, a new corner of this community, and it just continued to drive my addiction, essentially. You know, it just, the nicer knife I got, the more I wanted to try that nicer knife, the next level. And yeah, that pair of 3, I don't have it anymore, but I couldn't like sell it. I couldn't get it out of my space. So what I ended up doing was I gave that knife to my best friend since we were like 11, you know, 13 maybe when we met. But he's one of my oldest friends. There's only one other guy I still hang out with that is from that long ago. And yeah, I gave it to him because, for one, I knew he would appreciate it, use it, take care of it. He's a handyman. I mean, he works with glass, but he works with his hands, and he appreciates his tools, takes care of his tools. And I knew he would take care of it. I knew he'd appreciate it, and I knew it would stay within my circle, you know. So I gave it to him, and it remains within my family essentially. But that is the knife that broke me. For those of you guys that can go back and even watch my video, I think it was called The Knife That Broke Me or whatever. But that was the knife, and it's opened a world that I didn't even know existed, essentially. I mean, first I did some handles. If you go back to my oldest, you know, when I first got into the community, it was because I wanted to make handles for what was that knife? It's the Turok, the K-bar Turok. And I made micarta handles scales for that knife. And when I did that, it started watching YouTube, and then I saw the pair of 3, and it just snowballed, guys. And the guy the guy from the farmer's market who bought the 945, he went down the rabbit hole really bad, just like I did. He's reading, you know, going into the forums about what tools are the right tools, like the Weehaw. I got him onto the Weehaw bits, and he started going down that rabbit hole. He has just snowballed down it, and it kind of brought back that memory of like how it felt to be like, oh my gosh, what do I want next? You know, I think he's bought 3 knives in the past like 3 weeks. So it's just really interesting to me to see his evolution, and it just brought me back to that feeling. And I wanted to talk to you guys about it because I think it's easy to just fall down it, especially if you have a good amount of assets that you're not held up on, you know, something, spending money essentially. If you have that kind of income that you can just drop $200 or $300 every few weeks, or even every week, if you know, once a month you can drop $200 or $300, that's dangerous sometimes, because you will find yourself just continuing to like get the next thing and the next thing. So what I can say to help alleviate some of that is go ahead and watch videos, you know, go back and watch videos, you know, search for that knife, look it up, see if you can avoid making bad purchases. Although I will say, in this community, what's kind of nice is you can buy and sell. There's a lot going on in the aftermarket. You know, you can sell stuff on eBay, you can sell stuff on Instagram. Once you get into the community, there's good flipping type of, you know, it's easy to flip stuff. So if you get a knife, usually you only lose like $10-$20, you know, if that. If sometimes you can make money if you get the right knives, but it's one of those things where you can easily try something and sell it. And it's almost like renting it. Like, you keep it for 2 months and you sell it, you lose $20. It's like paying $10 a month to have that knife. But I think it's important. If you don't have knife stores near you, it's imperative. You have to do it that way, because you can't go and handle knives. especially once you get into the more expensive knives like Medford and stuff like that. You can't find stores that have them. So it's hard to know if you're gonna like a knife or not. So don't be scared to buy knives. But at that same time, don't go paying more than the knife is worth on eBay, because then you might get stuck with a knife, or you might lose money on a knife. So that's one thing I could tell you to help alleviate some of that pain you might go through of losing some cash. But at the same time, I think it's important to try a lot of different things and to find out what you like. Because there are things I would have said I liked at the beginning just because, not even regurgitating, but things that you hear in the knife community, and things that when you first get a knife, you're like, oh, I love that feeling of when it just drops back in, you know? And I would be targeting, see, you can see this is not like a free flow, you know, free dropping compression lock. It actually was at one time, but I think I need to do some work on it to get it back to where it was. But also when I sanded the scales, I think maybe some of the rigidity in the scales may have, you know, now it flexes when I pulled the compression lock. I'm not sure, but I could probably mess with it and get it back to where it's free dropping. But at the beginning, I was so focused on finding that knife, like getting that perfect example of the knife where it dropped back in without having any free play, which this one has a little bit of free play right now. But so there were things I fell into, which are things that you hear re-expressed, like expressed again and again, and you hear it over and over in the knife community. Is like, is it free dropping? Is it you know? But as you get more into it and as you use knives, you will find that some of those things aren't even important to you. You know, you may hear it again, but it doesn't mean it's something that you necessarily have to want. So when I first started collecting, I kind of like those bearing knives where they just drop free. And, you know, like that free dropping even when you're not holding the lock bar. But it's once I started to get a lot of knives that were like that, I started to feel how, like, and I say rickety just for lack of better terms, but they feel loose. Like they don't feel as rigid and tough. And then, you know, all those, that free dropping means that there's space in that pivot. So there's more room for gunk and sand and dirt and stuff like that in those pivots. When you're talking about a washer knife, there's a lot less room for stuff to get in there. It feels more solid. There's less play necessarily. I know it's not play because with a bearing knife you can get it where there's no free play, but it still feels like it because of that looseness as the blade. And there's an easy, good way to cut yourself as well, because once you start sharpening your own knives and getting them to that hair whittling type of edge, if it drops and hits your thumb, you are going to cut yourself. I've done it a million times. There was a time when my thumb just wouldn't heal, and I almost went through my nail from knives dropping and hitting my nail. It was getting to the point where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna put a hole in my nail. And that's another thing that happens when you first get in. You'll sit there on the couch and flip a knife like, 1,000 times, and it just becomes one of those things where you're just like, it's like a nervous habit, like it's a fidget toy, and you'll end up putting like holes in your thumb, like I had calluses that just wouldn't heal because it just continued to like rub the skin raw. You kind of go through that whole thing, but at this point I still love to flip my knives, but it's not like a persistent sitting there flipping, which I know my wife would appreciate, or my ex-wife would have appreciated if I got through that a little faster. But yeah, it's just one of those things. You're gonna go through all those stages of your addiction in a sense, and I just feel like I got past that stage of like fidget, always flipping my knives, wanting that free dropping action. I don't care if it free drops. I do like, I like that feeling where the knife just slides down. But once it does this, I don't need it to like drop into the knife. I kind of like that I have this control. And what that also means is that there's enough, other way. There's enough lock bar tension that it's not gonna fail. That is the tension of the lock bar. When you have a knife that drops free, that is not enough lock bar tension. And usually that means that it could fail. It doesn't always mean that, but lock bar tension is what keeps a knife from just dropping. I didn't realize that at first, but a lot of times that's what keeps it from dropping free, is that lock bar tension. It's not necessarily how smooth a knife is. It's a misconception there. Even for me, I had the misconception like, oh, it's not as smooth. No, it was lock bar tension. I realized that later. But so these are things that you're gonna find as you go through. You know, it's a long process. It took me years to like kind of find exactly what I like, and there are things you'll hear me say at the beginning that I wouldn't stand by at this point, because I've learned that it doesn't really matter to me. It doesn't. So, excuse me, in saying that, this is where it got for me. This is where it all led. My collection. For me, once I got into CRKs, as far as like, when we're talking production knives, this is the pinnacle, in my opinion. And this is where it all led. And honestly, this is where it could end. I could literally carry CRKs the rest of my life, and I would be happy. Chris Reeve knives, for those of you guys that don't know what this is, which I'd be surprised. This is a small 21. And the, what's it called? Insingo blade, Insingo, which is essentially a sheep's foot. So this is the pinnacle as far as production knives are concerned, in my opinion. Now, I have some case knives from Switzerland. I have some customs from him. And BGM knives, I have a fixed blade from him. Now, custom knives, you're getting into a whole nother realm. And honestly, a lot of times with custom knives, you're not going to get the fit and finish, the precision sometimes, because when you get into a custom knife, now they're making them one at a time. And it's hard to get the same precision when you're not talking about like, more of a production setting where things are being just popped out. Sometimes you get a little bit more consistency when you're doing it like that. So you're not always going to get the most consistent knife in a custom, although you will have the attention to detail that a custom maker does for each knife. So there's a give and take when you get into customs. Obviously, heat treat is one of those things where if the maker is very particular on his heat treat, you're going to get a better heat treat on the steel. But CRK does go above and beyond, and they do small batch heat treats. The heat treat on a CRK is about as good as it gets on a production knife, in my experience. So that's what you have to think of when you're getting deeper and deeper into the community. There is a whole realm. You can go from knives like, obviously, I've had plenty of cheap knives. This is like a cold steel tough light. This is kind of where it all starts for pretty much everyone, is like, Kershaw, Gerber, stuff like that. We all start there. That's where everyone kind of starts when they're kids usually. Swiss Army knives and stuff like that. And then depending on which way you go, if you're into more of that traditional type knives, you go into GECs, and then you can go into customs and all these stuff. But and then if you're into folding knives that are locking and stuff like that, more of that modern knife, then you go into Spyderco Benchmade, and I mean, you can go, there's so many knives nowadays, and you can go so deep. And there's so many Chinese knives, which you guys know I don't necessarily endorse on my channel anymore. And I mean, there was a time I got into that too, because I didn't quite have that set in myself yet. But at this point, I choose not to support that with my, this is extra stuff, guys. I already have the knives I need for my everyday stuff. So this is extra. This isn't something I need. So I'm choosing not to support Chinese companies with my extra income. Now, that's me. I'm not judging you guys out there. I'm not judging anyone. I'm just saying personally. So saying that, I don't want to support what I don't believe in personally. But there is a lot of knives out there from China. So if you guys don't have any issue with that, man, you can go to your heart's delight. I mean, there's so much stuff out there, and so many U.S. makers that go to China to have their production knives made. And honestly, I do have an issue with that, but I'm not going to get into that. That's not what this video is about. So yeah, to wrap this up, what I wanted to talk about was that loving feeling and I haven't lost that loving feeling, but I've simmered. You know what I mean? I'm not like searching for that next thing because I found what I love. If, I can, like I said, if I sold all my knives tomorrow and just kept my CRKs, I would miss them. I miss some of the knives I don't have anymore that I've sold. I miss them. But I would be okay. And I would just love my CRKs and I would be happy. To me, that's where the pinnacle ended. But it's not for everybody, and some people will always just continue to buy more and more and more and more and more and more. Now, and I probably will. I mean, I just recently bought a knife, but it's simmered. It's slowed down. I'm not as driven to go looking for that next thing. Now, something might pop up that I want to try, or some new steel like Magna Cut, which I'm definitely intrigued by and want to try some. That's a steel that Laren from Knife Steel Nerds came up with. So I'm really eager to try that steel, and that's going to push me into trying something new. And now Tactical Turn, or I think is the name of the company that makes the pins, they're making knives now, and they have Magna Cut. So I might try one of those just because I haven't tried one yet. I haven't tried one of those Dimco 8220.5s or any of those Dimcos, so I want to try one of those. So there's stuff that's still out there that I'm curious about. But it's just that, oh man, there is that time at the beginning where it's hard to not buy a knife once a week. And I miss that feeling a little bit, but I'm also glad that it's over, because it can be hard on your pocketbook, and it can be hard on your mental state, because you're constantly looking, and it's almost like like I said, it's addiction, you're like, and then you're waiting for that knife to show up. He was like, oh my gosh, the tracking says it's going to be on Friday. I can't wait. I just remember that feeling. I still get it, when I buy a new knife, I'm still waiting for it. Like, oh, when is it going to show up? And that first time you open the box, is it gonna, ignite you, or is it going to be like, are you going to be bummed? So that's a really cool feeling. And I just wanted to talk about it today. And I want to say that enjoy it while it lasts, and enjoy that feeling, but don't let it control you, because it can go down a really deep rabbit hole, and you don't necessarily want to end up divorced or anything. Not that that's why I got divorced. That didn't have anything to do with it, but it's just one of those things where you can go down a pretty deep rabbit hole. And I'm always for staying honest with your significant other, and making sure you're not, not paying for your kids' soccer because you're buying knives. I would say to be responsible. Be responsible with your addiction, but at the same time, enjoy it. And I'm hoping to get more of these types of videos out, something that's gonna be more into helping newer people. This is for that newer guy who's just out there looking for how to control this thing that's going on in his head. Watch videos, look for people that you respect that are telling you what the knife's like, and it just seems like you want to take it easy, just don't go too deep too fast, because you're going to go down a rabbit hole, and it's easy to get lost in that. It's easy to get lost and end up getting stuff that you don't need. And I mean, I've got stuff that just sits there. It's just, like stones and all these different things, and strops and compounds, and oh man, it's endless. So learn how to sharpen yourself is one of those things I can recommend. Learn how to sharpen yourself, whether it be a system or freehand. I think freehand's the best way to go if you can, if you have that, because it's faster. The systems are great for people that are perfectionists. I'm one of those people that I like that my edges are always kind of perfect, always the same, and I don't have to worry about one day, and I have arthritis and carpal tunnel, so the free stones sometimes gets to my hand from holding the knife. Even though, like with the guided systems, I can change my position more so and do things that will alleviate my hands. So yeah, it's one of those things that just go with what you feel. And if you have any questions, you can always ask me. I want to do a Q&A live coming up soon, so you guys can ask me questions about how to sharpen, how to sharpen compound, what should we get, what should I use for this, what should I get. I want to do a video with that, so any of you guys can ask questions below here if you have any questions, guys that are new. And yeah, that's it. I want to talk about how to fire your knife correctly, how to, I mean, there's all different ways, but how to, like, a lot of guys would wonder, like, how do I fire a knife like that? How do you do, thumb flicks and stuff like that? So I want to get more into those sorts of things and teach people that are new in the community and people that want to learn more. I'll do a video about HRC. So I got a lot of stuff coming up, and I want to get more into maybe knife education and stuff like that, because I feel like that's the route I need to go, because purchasing and purchasing and purchasing and purchasing and feeding the capitalism that I don't necessarily fully agree with is not really where I want to go. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope this brought value to you, and I hope that you enjoyed it, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.